Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Shane Massoud. I'm a government relations manager for Southern California Edison. We're looking forward to tonight's meeting. Tonight is a meeting that encompasses both Riverside and San Bernardino counties, and we're going to be discussing some of our wildfire safety programs and initiatives and some of the grid investments we're making. Before we do that, in Edison fashion, safety is always our top priority. So I wanted to have a quick safety moment with everyone here on the call tonight. If we could move to the next slide, would be great. Oh, just real quick, I want to go over a couple housekeeping items. Appreciate that reminder. This meeting will be recorded for those who are unable to attend or who would like to watch this later. The Q&A feature that will allow you to make any comments or any questions. Questions will be addressed at the end of the presentation. We'll dedicate a large portion of tonight's meeting towards trying to answer all of your questions. If we're unable to answer your questions, or if a question doesn't come to mind during the meeting, but you want to have a follow-up conversation, please reach out to our wildfire outreach at SCE.com email address, and we will work to address some of those comments and concerns. Next slide, please. Okay, so for our safety moment tonight, we wanted to talk about down wire. Here in this picture, you can see a perfect illustration of some down wire as a result of high winds. And if you look further back, you can see a large tree that fell on some of our overhead wire. So if you ever see a down wire, obviously stay away, call 911 immediately. Always treat the down wire as energized. Never assume that it's de-energized. Stay clear and away, not contacting the power lines. Stay clear of vehicles near the down power lines, and if necessary, escape safely. Next slide, please. This is just an overview of our agenda for this evening. We'll have a brief presentation by the emergency manager and director for the County of Riverside, as well as the emergency manager director for San Bernardino County. We'll hear from our weather and fire sciences team. We'll talk about wildfire safety, grid hardening, and our public safety power operation updates. We'll talk about customer programs and resiliency, and then we'll leave some time for Q&A. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and welcome Dan Bates, the Emergency Management Director for Riverside County.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Shane. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, Dan, we can. Thank you.
Perfect. So I just want to get started here real quick, and I have to highlight the title of this presentation for this evening, and we really are the commitment to keeping San Bernardino and Riverside County safe. I think that is our top priority for both Riverside and San Bernardino counties. So we do have one quick slide that we just kind of want to highlight and talk about real quick. If you can go ahead and forward it one slide, please. So this is really what we want to emphasize here with the community is preparedness equals resilience. And this is just as a reminder for us that disasters can happen at any time, and it's important for us to be prepared. The mention here again today is going to be the preparedness equals resilience. Every time we have incidents, we have this opportunity to learn from our previous events and how we can improve for the future. And I think one of the easiest and simplest things that we can do to help communities and residents be safe is to sign up for notifications. So for us here in Riverside County, the best way to do that is to stay informed. And one of the easiest things you can do is signing up for Alert Rivco. You can do so by going to our website, and it's on here is rivcoready.org. /alert Rivco. And the other thing that you could do is also download Genesis Protect. Genesis Protect is a complementary tool that we use with our alerts here in Riverside County to really try to streamline and ensure residents have actionable and meaningful information as soon as it is important for them to have that. In addition to our social media accounts that we have at Rivco Ready, We also believe that following trusted official sources is very important for information. So you're getting that right information that is trusted and verified sources. So here in Riverside County, there's three primary ones that we really like to highlight. At Rivco Ready, at CAL FIRE RRU, which is our county fire department, CAL FIRE Riverside County, and then at RSO, which is Riverside Sheriff's Department. Those three social media will also give you great information and links to additional services. One of the other things that we have is have a plan. Know where you're going to go, who you're going to call. There are some great resources out there. In the event of a public safety power shutoff, cooling centers, community centers, warming centers, great resources, great places to go to. Know who to call in your family, and then have a kit. That's one of the biggest things that we always try to emphasize. And starting small, it can be a simple plan. It could be a simple kit. We encourage put something new every day inside that kit or every month when you get an opportunity to. And so build it basically, things like water, snacks, toiletries, some clothes, things that you could put into the back of your car or your truck, something that's really convenient and accessible for you. Simple things that we also sometimes don't necessarily always think about. What about our pets? So making sure we have bowls, collars, leashes, carriers, things like that that we may need for our pets. Keep our cars at least halfway full of fuel. And one of the things that is something that we always like to emphasize, don't forget about electric vehicles. So electric vehicles is out there. Make sure your electric vehicles are charged if you have that. And then also plan for any medical needs. I think that this is something that Shane mentioned is about community programs or customer programs that exist. So one of the things here in Riverside County is we like to emphasize accessing 2-in-1 for county programs as well as nonprofit programs. Things like Office of Aging or some of the other programs through Southern California Edison. You may be durable medical equipments that are powered that you need to have battery backups for. So there are a lot of different programs that are out there, and resources like 211 can be a great resource to help get you connected to those. And then one of the things that we do as well on our webpage also, if you go to rivcoready.org/power outages, and specifically for power outages, you will see quite a bit of stuff on there, not just about what we've already talked about, but things like food safety, food handling, what you need to do about it, how to keep your medications cool if they are required to be refrigerated. So those are some of the things that we really kind of emphasize here when we're talking about just preparedness. And again, preparedness starts at home. While we're working on preparedness every single day, it's important that the community does their part to make sure that your household is ready in the event of a disaster. So that's one of the things that we want to just try to emphasize, and I'll circle it back to that title of this slide is preparedness equals resilience. And Shane, that is what we have for this evening real quick from Riverside County. I will go ahead and stay on for any questions that there may be.
Dan, thank you so much. We really appreciate your continued collaboration and partnership, particularly when it comes to resiliency. So thank you, sir. Just a quick reminder, folks, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A chat feature that's on the top. That's where we'll be having most of our dialogue this evening. I'd like to now welcome to our virtual stage Chris Santa Gonzalez with the Emergency Management Director for San Bernardino County.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for being here and joining us. And I wanted to thank Southern California Edison for hosting this public webinar. This highlights our partnership between the utilities, local government, and our community. So thank you all for participating in this. My name is Crisanta Gonzalez. I am the Director for San Bernardino County Office of Emergency Services. So we at OES, we coordinate emergency preparedness response. We partner with fire, law, public works, public health, cities, schools, businesses, community organizations on what we call Blue Sky Days to try and get information out to the public on how they can best be prepared. And then on Gray Sky Days, of course, we activate our Emergency Operations Center and we coordinate all the county entities here so that we can help support our residents. Our mission is to safeguard lives, property, and the environment through collaboration and readiness. As you can see on the slide, we work with Southern California Edison. We try and co-locate our community resources booths with their community resource centers. So we bring information, for example, if you're going to have a PSPS for an extended amount of time and you feel it's going to, you you haven't didn't get a chance to put all your food on ice, we bring environmental health out to help give you some gloves and some garbage bags and some resources on how best to dispose of food that may have gone bad. We also have behavioral health contacts that we bring to these resource booths. And we also bring all of the wonderful preparedness information that Dan so eloquently covered on how to prepare for your pets, how to prepare as a community, how to prepare as a neighborhood, thinking about your family, what does that look like for your older adults, you know. But throughout this slide, I'm always going to be talking about community, because that's kind of where you need to go first. You need to go to your neighbors, get to know your neighbors, and form a community plan that helps support your family plan as well, because we all have to go to work and sometimes we can't be there for our pets. So it's always good to get to know your neighbors and see those who will support you. Some of the tools that we have for you that I'd really like you to consider to download is if you live in San Bernardino County, we have the Telephonic Emergency Notification System, or our TEN system. I have the website here in the slide down on the lower level. It's prepare.sbcounty.gov. Again, that's prepare.sbcounty.gov. So if you go there, you can sign up for our notification system, which is the county-wide opt-in alerting system. So once you opt in and you put your address and you fill out your profile, then we're able to send specific messaging to the right people. If there is a wide need for what we call a wireless emergency alert, a WEA, then we will encompass all of our territory. But more often than not, we geofence the communities that need to hear the messaging. So that's why it's important to go to our website, fill out your profile so that we get the right target for the right messaging. On October 16th, 2025, I want to remind you all that is the Great Shakeout. So I want to remind you to drop, cover, and hold at 10:16 in the morning. So at 10/16/2025, at 10:16 in the morning, please participate in the Great Shakeout. And remember, drop, cover, hold. And on that same day, we will be releasing the new updated Ready SB County app. So this app has a brand new look, has brand new features. We've streamlined it so it's easy to use, has many resources on it. For example, it has a button that you can get to know all the hazards in our county. It has a button, safety toolkit. So on Blue Sky days, you can use it for friend walk. If you are walking somewhere and you don't feel comfortable, you can have a friend go virtually walk with you. You can also use it as a location tool on it. If you go hiking in one of our beautiful mountains and you want someone to know your location, that'll be on there as well. And then we also have, if you're in a disaster and you want to set up people you want to notify, there's an I'm okay button there that you can tap. And there's also many, many other features. There's a button that will get you to watch duty. It will get you to quick maps on Caltrans. It will give you all kinds of resources to be ready before a disaster and to have information at your fingertips during a disaster. We will automatically send any alerts that go out to specific areas will be duplicated on this app. So even if you are in a position where you're not getting an alert, this is a redundancy to make sure that all of our residents have that tool. So on October 16th, please go to your app store and download the Ready SB County app onto your phone. And let me know how you like it. The other thing is community emergency response teams. We really encourage you to come together as a community and join a training for our CERT. We're really excited. It's free for residents, and we've also got it in Spanish, listos. And then now we're developing a new pilot program for teen CERT. So we have identified a few pilot high schools, and we're teaching these important CERT skills to high school students so they can take them not only in their own school if they need to activate a plan, but they can also take it home and teach their families. So we're very excited about that. Please go to our website to learn more about that opportunity. And I just want to leave you with how you and your community can prepare today, the things you can do today to be prepared for any eventuality. So, we live San Bernardino County, we have deserts, we have mountains, we have the valley, we have a wild urban interface for fires. So I want to encourage you to always be prepared, whether that's a family emergency, the water pipe breaks at home, or a global pandemic, or an earthquake, or a wildfire, or a pest. It doesn't matter. If you start to communicate with your family and your community and your neighbors, then you're ready for anything. So some of the ways you can do that is, again, sign up for our TENS alerting system. Make a family plan. So whether that's for PSPS, where you're going to be at home and you need to know what to do if the power is going to be out for an extended amount of time, have that conversation with your family, with your neighbors about what the plan's going to be. And then also, if you have to evacuate, if there is a wildfire and you have to evacuate, have a plan. We offer listos, where we will come to your neighborhood and we will set up a block party. And so in this party, you'll play games, you'll engage with all your neighbors, and you'll start talking about the plans you can do together as a community. So please go to our website if you're interested in bringing your community or your neighborhood together. Again, don't forget, October 16th, 2025, download our new and improved Ready SB County app. And then I really want to emphasize, Dan spoke really well about building a kit. I don't think I need to go too much into that. Remember your pets, remember the elderly, but have a kit for if you have to evacuate, but also have a kit if you're going to respond as a neighborhood team. And we have more information on that on the website. So remember, tie a bag to the foot of your bed, and in there have your shoes, sturdy shoes, have some gloves in there, have either a bicycle helmet or a work, like a construction helmet. Have glasses in there so you can see. So if this emergency happens in the middle of the night, protect yourself first. Put on your preparedness equipment first. Check on your family second to make sure your family is okay. Do what you need to do to stabilize your home, and then go outside and get together with your neighbors and see what needs to be done. Do you need to check utilities? Do you need to check down power lines? It's like Shane mentioned in the first slide. What do you need to do to stabilize your community? Because as much as we are going to wait for the first responders to come to our personal street and our personal neighborhoods, it's best if we get ready. So when the responders get there to help us, we've already mitigated many of the emergencies and we can actually help them help us. So I'm really excited for you guys to do that as well. And I want to leave you with, get to know your neighbors. In every disaster historically, it's been that the neighbors are the first ones to respond and support each other. So they're the first ones to know if there's a 80-year-old neighbor who needs extra help, or a neighbor who's 8 months pregnant and might need a little help with her younger children or her dogs and need that extra help. So it's really important that as a community, we strengthen each other and we come together and we make a plan together. So please let us know how we can help. Again, our website is in my slide there, and then follow us on our social media at Ready SB County. We have a lot of great tips on our Instagram and on our X, so please follow us there. With that, I think Dan covered a lot of the other great information that I was going to cover, and I don't want to be redundant, but just be mindful of who is around you that needs a little extra help. We've heard a lot of stories from the campfire where there was an elderly woman and her garbage man came and picked her up out of her home because he had gotten to know his community. He knew she had no one and that she needed help getting out of that campfire situation in Northern California. We hear stories like that all the time, where there's up and around the hill in our mountain areas, maybe only the neighbors know that there's an 80-year-old lady there who is being taken care of by her 60-year-old son. So if we don't know about our neighbors, we can't go tell the first responders to go up there and check. So I just want to emphasize the community is so important, and getting to know your community and getting to know your neighbors makes us that much stronger and makes us that much more resilient. So I want to thank you all for your time, and I will be available for questions after the end of this meeting. So thank you all.
Prasanta, thank you so much. I think you highlighted a very important point about how community truly plays a key role in our broader commitment to safety. So thank you. With that, we're going to move over to our weather and fireside. So Heather, please take it away.
Thanks, Shane, and good evening, everyone. I'm Heather. I'm going to go over a couple topics regarding the weather and fire potential forecast and how we forecast and some situational awareness tools. So let's jump right into it. So over the next few months, temperatures are expected to be above average. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that we're not going to see those cool fall days. It just means that we're likely to see above average temperatures that can vary. It could be anything from like 1 degree to a few degrees. And that's really going to be depending on the weather pattern present at the time. So we'll just have to stay tuned a little bit for that. You know, we could get some really cool days and colder weather coming through with winter storms. So I don't think that's something to necessarily dwell on. I do have an image of the current drought monitor on this slide, and that's showing the current conditions. However, I wouldn't really expect the drought status to remain largely unchanged across most areas until we get really that substantial rain that occurs. And I'm sure you all have heard that La Nina is making a reappearance this fall. While we typically are linking that kind of condition to drier conditions for weather, past La Nina years have actually seen some significant rainfall. We saw that in 2022 and a couple other years, and some current models actually suggest some near normal precipitation. So that's looking really good right now. This is a stark difference to what we were seeing last year and how dry it was at the end of the year. And the expected precipitation would help with vegetation moisture across the wildland areas. So that'll add to that natural mitigation of fire potential. But moving forward, any fire activity will be driven by wind events, especially Santa Ana winds, which thankfully are actually forecast to be slightly below average through November. So generally, we might have a less windy and wetter couple of months here, but until we really do get those widespread wetting rains, PSPS events are going to remain possible in the driest regions. Next slide, please. So a common question that I usually get about weather forecasting is, what is the difference between what we use to forecast versus the National Weather Service? And I wrote that one down because that one is, I get it time and time again. And to really answer that, I personally would use two words: resolution and purpose. So to start with the resolution, the images being shown tell us two different stories from the exact same time frame. The NOAA-based models, which is what the NWS uses, are based on those based models are forecast for a larger area, usually around 3 kilometer squares across the land, while SCE forecasts are at a higher resolution that forecasts about 2 kilometer squares across the land. So you can see a little bit of a difference in those square sizes in those two images, and the difference and you can see that difference in where the higher winds could be expected as well. So the SCE weather modeling capabilities are able to really hone in on smaller areas and give a more accurate forecast for the communities. This in turn helps us make decisions for scoping PSPS and gives us the information we need as far as 7 days out. And some of our higher resolution models that could even be 1 kilometer squares, those are actually, those go 3 days. So it looks like we can get some higher resolution modeling within those timeframes as well. And in terms of purpose, the National Weather Service forecasts for regions are forecast for regions to help present weather hazards to the public, as well as assist in emergency staging and planning, while SCE forecasts for weather events that could impact infrastructure, which could impact our communities, and that can be for a number of reasons, like snowstorms, fire weather, and even hurricane remnants, like we saw a couple of years ago. So, and you can see on the maps on here, we do have infrastructure overlaid. So that's kind of those are the areas that we're forecasting for on that fine resolution. All right, next slide, please. So here is an image of the weather station network, primarily over the Inland Empire. So I'm looking at San Bernardino Riverside. You can see all those little dots on there. That is a weather station that SCE has installed on the infrastructure in the area. We have about 1,870 weather stations. That can be plus or minus just because of maybe something's down, and we've also been installing more weather stations. And what this does, it gives us real-time information on weather and the humidity and all of that stuff, which I can show in the next slide. But what we're looking at right here is just kind of how dense our network is. Along with these weather stations, we actually do have some fuel sampling sites. We have some in the Inland Empire, and what those do is we go out every other week. We take some vegetation samples and we determine how much moisture is actually within that vegetation. And that lets us understand how flammable the vegetation is, how dry it is, and really what could spread into a large wildfire in prime conditions. So that's something that we always keep an eye out for. Next slide, please. All right, and kind of just, I wanted to show the anatomy of a weather station. I think the fun part about the weather stations is they are in your backyard. We actually have a lot of them out there. So if you ever see one out there now, you kind of know what they're doing, what we're able to look at. We have that wind monitor at the top. That's going to give us the wind direction, wind speed. We have the temperature and the relative humidity sensor, which tells us how dry it is. We have a satellite communicator. That's just relaying information so that we can see it in real time, where we make those decisions based off of real-time weather all the time if there needs to be a de-energization during a PSPS event. So we're not solely relying on forecast weather. We have the solar panel to keep that battery pack going in the bottom portion right there, the data logger and battery. And that's just allowing for all that information to be transmitted to SCE. And the fun part about the weather stations is that all of this information is publicly available. You can actually go on to a couple of different websites that I believe are going to be posted in the chat for everyone. And you can go in and look in your neighborhood, see where a weather station is. You can see the past weather that's been happening. You can see current weather that's happening, and you can kind of keep an eye on it too and maybe go check one out. We also have the fuel sampling sites that are also publicly available that you can also go check out as well, and just kind of see how dry the vegetation is out there or how moist it is, depending on the time of the year. So I think that's all that I have. I'm not sure if there are any questions that I need to address right now, but I will address some of those. And for right now, we will go into the PSPS operations update and grid hardening, and I'm going to pass it on over to Terry Ohanian.
Yeah, thank you, Heather. Good evening, everyone. There's a question in there about what is PSPS, and that's public safety power shutoff. So that's primarily what I'm going to talk about here. It's an important tool that we use. It's a measure of last resort for us when dangerous fire conditions are present. And what it means is, we turn off the power when we see conditions that are particularly concerning to us in terms of fire weather and winds. We've had the ability to use this for quite some time, but we really didn't start doing this until around 2018. And at that time, we started to experience a significant shift in fire outcomes where, at that time when a spark was occurring, we just seemed to have more explosive fire results. And so we started it back then. Since then, each year, we've worked to refine our protocols and our grid resiliency, really in an effort to reduce customer impacts. We do that every year after every season. We know how exceptionally difficult it is to lose power, and we understand the hardship that it brings. So every year we're continuously installing new equipment. We're replacing our infrastructure in an effort to reduce the frequency, scope, and duration of customer impacts associated with PSPS. But unfortunately, sometimes that is not enough. And so that's when we have to resort to a PSPS. On the next couple of slides, I want to just cover some terms and some concepts that we use regarding PSPS. The first is Fire Potential Index. We refer to that as FPI. It's a complicated formula. It incorporates things like dead fuels, live fuels, how much annual vegetation has greened up, the amount of actual vegetation on the ground that can burn. There's also a weather component. So essentially what FPI is doing is measuring how likely a spark will actually cause a fire, and if a fire does start, how much it will spread. It has a score between 1 and 17. A 1 is essentially no risk. Think of like heavy winds during a rainstorm, which typically occurs in like the January, February timeframe. You might have the winds, but a fire is not going to start. So you really need both present. We typically start a PSPS around an FPI level of 12 or 13. These are concerning levels. It can vary. One important point is that at times, if we see conditions that suggest there's even greater risk, we might lower those FPI values to address that risk. For example, like if there's a number of wildfires burning in the state and resources are being redeployed to address those fires, we may have less firefighting resources in our area. So we look at those things, but generally these values around 12 or 13 is the first component to start a PSPS. The second component is wind speed threshold. So on the next slide, we cover some of the concepts around wind speeds. You need both fire potential and winds. This one I think people are more familiar with. So one important distinction, we use forecasts to determine if we activate a PSPS, but we use actual weather in the moment to decide whether we turn power on or off. Another important aspect of wind levels and how we make decisions is the information shown on the left and the right boxes. On the left is the National Weather Service wind advisory levels. These are wind speeds of 31 mile an hour sustained, 46 mile an hour gust. And it's at these speeds that we get worried that things can blow up and into our lines. And where we have bare wire, so much of our infrastructure used to be bare wire. This is wire exposed to the elements. And if that wire is not covered, if something blows up into those lines, you can have a spark, which is the precursor to a fire. So for 3146, if we have bare wire, those are the thresholds we start with when we activate a PSPS. The next level up is called a high wind warning. And these are considerably higher speeds, 40 mile an hour sustained, 58 mile an hour gusts. This is a level where we get worried that things are going to start to break. Things are going to start to fall, like trees, large trees will fall into our lines and bring them down. And it's at these levels that, even if we had insulated wires out there, that conductor can break and the ends can be exposed to the ground, which can again cause a spark and a fire. An important call out here on the right, the National Weather Service wind speed levels, they can be adjusted downward, again, based on risk conditions that we might see are present. So in this case, it's circuit-specific conditions. If we have a circuit that we feel may have some work or maintenance activity that's still pending that we haven't been able to get to, we might discount those wind speed factors. So we could in fact see PSPS utilized at lower wind speeds. The next slide, just want to cover some timelines. There's a little bit of a change this year. About a week out, we start to track the weather. We're modeling information. People like Heather and her counterparts, meteorologists, are looking at weather patterns. And we're noticing that a PSPS might be coming into play, but there's still too much uncertainty to start to act on it. About 3 days out, a little bit more clarity here. And it's at this point that we begin the notification process. So a change from last year. Last year, we would notify cities and agencies of a potential PSPS 3 days out, but we would wait until 2 days out to notify customers. This year, we're going to notify customers at the same time, 3 days out. That's the first notification you would get. But I want to make you aware that there's still variability in those forecasts. And particularly where you might see it is circuits, that might just barely be in or barely out of a PSPS. So it's possible on 3 days out, you might get a notification saying, you're part of PSPS, but the next day the forecasts diminish a little bit and now you're no longer in, or it could go the other way around. You were just barely out and now you're in. So we do our best to notify you 3 days out, but over those next several days before the event, we continue to monitor, model, update, and notify. During an event, what we try to do is provide notifications 1 to 4 hours before we de-energize. This can be really difficult for us. At the onset of an event, what you start to see is wind speeds. They typically bounce around a lot. They just don't move in this nice, straight, linear fashion. Instead, what you see is, winds kind of bounce up, bounce down, but you can usually see a directional trend, going up. And what we're trying to do is predict when we might actually get 1 to 4 hours out from a de-energization. And when we get there, we'll send that notice out. But I will say this: sometimes, we see it rising, we send the notification out, but then the winds subside, they come back down, and we will not turn off the power just because we sent you a notification. And so we may end up sending you that notification, but then if the winds diminish, we're going to keep the power on. Conversely, the opposite can happen, unfortunately, where things are remaining relatively calm, and then all of a sudden there's just a significant change in activity. The wind speeds elevate significantly, and we find ourselves in this position where we have to turn the power off, and we haven't been able to give you, that notification. But just know that we are working hard behind the scenes, as we watch those wind speeds rise to try to provide those notifications within that 1 to 4 hour window. If the power is turned off, we send you a notification that it is off. There are sometimes you're not home, so you're able to get that notification that the power has in fact been turned off. And then once the weather subsides, we begin what we call a restoration patrol. And this is where we inspect a portion of the circuitry that was turned off. We need to do this because when that circuit is turned off, there could be things hung up in our lines, tree branches. We even had trees literally leaning into our circuitry. And if we were to turn the power back on in that situation, we could end up creating a spark, and a fire, defeating the purpose of PSPS. So it's really important that we do go out there and inspect. When we do that, we send you a notification saying we're beginning the restoration process. And then lastly, when the power is turned back on, we send you a notification for that as well. Now I want to cover, on the next couple of slides, some of the things we're doing to strengthen our grid and improve our infrastructure. The first of these, arguably one of the most important elements of our wildfire mitigation strategy, is the replacement of bare wire with covered conductor. Our system, nearly our entire overhead system, similar to other utilities, was bare wire. And that means if something comes in contact, it can produce a spark and possibly a fire. And about 7 years ago, we began replacing our bare wire in high fire areas with covered conductor. This has an insulative layer around it. And the idea being if something comes in contact with that wire, essentially nothing happens, which is what we want. So we've managed to at this point cover about 70% of our circuitry. We have about 10,000 miles of overhead wire in high fire areas, and we've replaced that bare wire, about 70% of it, with covered conductor. I think in the Inland Empire, we're a little higher than that. Last time I checked, I think we were at about 85%. The next item here is fire-resistant poles and wraps. You may have seen some of these poles out there. They're composite materials. They look a little different. They're shinier. They're resistant to heat and fire. And the benefit here is if a fire does burn through the area, regardless of cause, oftentimes our infrastructure remains standing, and then we can more quickly restore service to our customers. Protective devices, simply these are like automated switches out in our circuitry. So we have large circuits. They originate at a substation with a circuit breaker, but what we've done is we've interset these switches throughout the circuitry. And what that allows us to do is isolate portions of our circuit where, coupled with those weather stations that Heather mentioned earlier, if we're just seeing a portion of the circuit impacted, we only turn off that portion. So these switches allow us to do that. We've been installing quite a significant number of these switches over the years, and it's giving us the ability to maintain continuity of power safely for as many customers as possible. Targeted undergrounding. So we've done a lot of covered conductor, and we're also looking at, there's certain areas where the wind just really blows, and it's significant. It's like these wind tunnels. And those are areas where, we worry about things like trees falling down into our lines. And so covered conductor alone is not enough. That's a perfect candidate for something like targeted undergrounding, where if we can underground that portion of the circuitry coupled with the covered conductor and the remaining portion of the circuitry, we can really layer in these additional benefits. And then the last one here, transmission hardening. I'll just say that, we're now looking really closely at our transmission system to ensure we have mitigation strategies to make that system even more robust as well. On the next slide is another key aspect of our wildfire strategy. It's vegetation management. We have 1.6 million trees that we look at every year. This is throughout our territory. Of that, about 750,000 trees are in high fire areas. And for those trees, we pay particularly closer attention. We oftentimes look at them more than once a year, and we trim them to even greater distances away from our infrastructure. In high fire, we try to maintain at all times at least 4 feet of clearance from our wires and our equipment. And in order to do that, we typically trim it 12 feet away so that over the course of the year, as the tree grows, it won't grow to within 12 feet. It's quite a task. I mean, we are just constantly out in the communities and trimming year round. Hazard trees, that's the third bullet there. These are trees that are sometimes some distance away. They won't grow into our lines, but they have what we call strike potential, meaning if the tree falls, it could hit our lines. We don't just trim or remove these trees. We have an arborist go out and look at them and assess the health of the tree and make a determination if it should be removed or not. We also do clearing around our poles. It's essentially someone with like a weed whacker clearing all the vegetation 10 feet out from the poles. And what this does is if we have equipment on the pole, if should that equipment fail and create a spark and it falls to the ground, the idea is that that vegetation around the pole would be cleared, and essentially the idea is to not create a fire. Lastly, we've been looking at new technologies. I think this is really throughout Edison. In the case of veg management, I call it the eye in the sky. Satellites can take a picture, and we couple that with a machine learning artificial intelligence model that can quickly and accurately assess proximity of the trees to our circuitry, so we can quickly deploy a trimming crew to go and mitigate that hazard. Okay, so now I want to pivot here to some of the types of outages that you might experience. And I'm going to bring this up because there's sometimes confusion because they can happen simultaneously. The PSPS outages, public safety power shutoff, that's what we've been talking about. So when the winds are reaching and breaching those concerning speeds and we have fire potential, we'll turn off the power to protect the public and your property and your livelihoods. But with that wind, we can also have, it can also create damage to our equipment. So before we de-energize, let's say we haven't quite reached those concerning levels, you can have a tree branch fall into our circuitry, and that's what we call, an emergency outage or a reactive outage. It happens in an unplanned way, and if we have a PSPS event occurring at the same time, that can also de-energize the equipment. So, a lot of times that kind of an outage might appear to be PSPS when in fact it was just something that reactively occurred. It can also be things like car hit poles or somebody running into our pad mount equipment. So it's any manner of things. These are unpredicted. And the challenge here, if they occur during PSPS, we not only have to patrol the line, but we also have to perform the repairs before we can re-energize. Maintenance outages, I mentioned, like covered conductor. In order to replace that wire, we have to take an outage to install that insulated wire. We try to give 10 days notice. Sometimes 10 days out, we provide that notice, but then 3 days before that outage, we see a PSPS coming in. When that happens, we try to cancel the maintenance outage because we're just trying not to, layer in so many outages for our customers. There are exceptions to that if it's highly critical work, but generally we try to cancel those outages. Okay, let's move on to the last couple of slides. Just some questions we typically get. Why is my power out when it isn't windy? And in this example, the orange is high fire areas. If you see the purple circle where it says substation, this is where the power originates from. So think of the power flowing out from there. And in the far left is an area that's not high fire, that's underground. So that circuitry goes from overhead to underground in that neighborhood. Well, if you have a PSPS close to the substation, essentially that entire circuit is de-energized. So people in that underground neighborhood may in fact experience an outage, even though they don't live in a high fire area or are underground. Now, I will also say we work behind the scenes to, if there is a connection, an electrical connection to an adjacent circuit, we will attempt to restore power for that underground neighborhood if we can isolate it from the high fire area. So sometimes we're able to do that. And if we do, it might take a 10-minute, 30-minute outage to do that. And so sometimes people wonder, why did I get a 30-minute outage? And it may in fact be a case where we're redirecting power from a nearby area that is not of concern. And the last slide, similar to this one, it's another question we get: why does my neighbor have power? I don't. It's a function of the circuitry. So on the left in yellow is high fire, and the orange line is depicting a de-energized circuit, and the purple and teal colored circuits to the right remain energized because they're not in high fire. And so you can literally have homes adjacent to one another. One is experiencing an outage, the other one is not. So with that, that includes my section. I want to now turn it over to Aurora Cantu, and she's going to talk about customer support and resiliency.
Okay, good afternoon there. For a second, I thought I had technical issues, but I'm back on. So good evening, everybody. My name's Aurora Cantoon. I'm a senior advisor with our PSPS customer support. So first, I want to start with, we know that PSPS is frustrating and it can take a toll, especially for vulnerable residents like our older adults, families with children, and individuals with medical needs. So I'll be sharing some resources and rebate programs that SE offers to help mitigate the impacts of PSPS. So I'm going to start with our CRC. So Crisanta mentioned our community resource centers. And so right now, SE currently has about 101, of which 9 are resilient, meaning that they operate even if local power is down. There is one in the Inland Empire in Cabazon, and it's called Cabazon Community Center, of course, in Cabazon. And so there's a total of 28 community resource centers located in the Inland Empire. At these centers, customers can charge their mobile devices, medical equipment, receive water, snacks, and thermal bags for medication. We also have accommodation to support our customers with access and functional needs, as well as translation services. So we do realize that there may be some difficulties for some people to locate one of these centers or get to one of those centers for support. So we do have a service through our 211 partnership, and I'll cover that in one of my other slides. And then I do want to mention that we also have 8 community crew vehicles. They're basically community resource centers on wheels. We also have worked with local communities to establish resiliency zones in communities frequently impacted by PSPS. So to date, there are 8 locations throughout our service territory. SE provides backup generators at these locations. So in your area, again, it's in Cabazon. So there's the Cabazon Fuel Center is one of these resiliency zones. Again, this enables impacted customers to maintain the use of essential services during any potential de-energizations. All right, so next I'm going to talk about our critical care battery programs. So first is the critical care battery program, which provides free batteries augmented with solar panels to medical baseline customers who reside in the high fire risk area. We also have our Event loan program for customers that don't qualify or haven't taken advantage of the critical care backup battery program, but do have a need for power of medical or assistant devices during a PSPS. And then I think there's been some questions on rebates. So we also have rebates for portable generators through our marketplace. And you'll find at the end of the presentation the links to all these resources. This is for residential and non-residential customers located in high fire risk areas. The rebate can vary for the generators anywhere between $200 and $600. Of course, the rebates are higher for customers who are on income qualified programs or medical baseline. And then we also have rebates for portable power stations for customers that reside in, again, high fire risk area. Just a note here, I do want to mention that since 2020, SCE has issued over 7,000 rebates for portable power stations and generator, and has distributed closely to 19,000 backup batteries to medical baseline customers residing in our high fire risk area. And so finally, I'm going to talk briefly about our self-generation incentive program. So this provides incentives for larger battery energy storage systems like Tesla, LG, Panasonic, wall-mounted systems, or larger whole business systems. So I do want to mention, though, that the SGIB program has limited fundings and will close to new applicants at the end of the year. Except for low-income qualified residents, there is still a new bucket of money for solar plus storage systems that will be available for new applications in October. Okay, yes, next page. Okay, and so now I'm going to talk about some additional support. So specifically for our customers with access and functional needs and the outreach to them during PSPS. So for those who are not familiar with access and functional needs or AFN, the CPUC defines this as individuals who have a physical, developmental, or intellectual disability, use electrical medical equipment at home, older adults, rely on public transportation, participants in the medical baseline program, non-English speaking customers, and then self-certified as having conditions that can be significantly affected by the interruption of power. So we partner with 211, and I know Dan mentioned it earlier, who links customers with access and functional needs, again, with transportation. And earlier I mentioned that if we have customers who have difficulties or challenges getting to our CRC, they can dial 211. They can get the transportation services to help take them to the CRCs. Also, they assist with lodging and food support. So we encourage our customers with AFN to dial 211 during a PSPS, or even prior to a PSPS to dial 211 now. They have a coordination app for more personalized support. And really what they do is they really help customers build out or enhance their emergency plans. There's been a lot of discussion. Chris Santa mentioned it, Dan mentioned it, planning, like preparedness. And so this 211 service really offers that opportunity. What I really like is that they help not only enroll you in some income qualified programs, medical baseline, but also help create kind of a map of resources around your area. So in event of any emergency, you know where those resources are available. So strongly, if I can highlight anything, get familiar with 211. I think it will really help with your emergency preparedness plan. Okay, and then SCE also works with local food banks to support food replacement during PSPS. So we have partnerships in your area with Feeding America, who supports Riverside and San Bernardino. And then we also have a partnership with Helping Hands Pantries, who supports the city of San Bernardino. They actually have a delivery service for the disabled. This service is limited and it does require a sign up in advance. So if you meet these criteria, I strongly encourage you to give them a call and maybe get that set up ahead of schedule. Also, we support customers with access and functional needs, emergency preparedness by leveraging our relationships with our community-based organizations, we call CBOs. We work with them to increase awareness of our medical baseline and promote enrollments. And then they really do help us disseminate information on our programs, which is something I'll ask of this group as well to help disseminate a lot of this information to those who may not be familiar with our programs. So in your area, we partner with 38 CBOs here in the Inland Empire. And I say here because I'm local, I'm a resident of Riverside, so I'm very familiar with this area. Medical baseline enrollments is important to ensure customers who have critical life support devices have backup battery support. And then I don't know if I mentioned it or if I'm going to mention it in my next slide, but if you're signed up in medical baseline, if we try to communicate with you via a notification and that fails, we do go out there and do door knocks to make sure that the customer is aware of PSPS conditions. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about microgrids. So in case you're not familiar, a microgrid is a combination of generation and electrical loads that can operate independently from a grid during an outage. So why consider a residential microgrid? So a microgrid can provide backup power during an outage, the same way that an emergency generator does, but a microgrid also operates in blue sky mode when the grid is healthy and the power is on. So I do want to note that the microgrids do require interconnection agreements and are typically interconnected under the net energy metering or the solar billing plan structure. All right, so backup generators. So let's talk a little bit about this. So this is an internal combustion engine, and I'm going to use a lot of the terminology that was provided by our engineers here, but this really is the workhorse of resiliency. So keep in mind that backup generators and has an associated refueling strategy should be considered as part of any resiliency plans. So I'm going to share a few points provided by our engineer. There are two broad categories. So we got the portable generators that are not interconnected to your electrical panel. You simply plug an appliance into it. Then you have generators that are interconnected to your electrical panel and incorporate some type of transfer switch. So for those that are interconnected to your electrical panel, there are manual and automatic units, but until they are up and running and transferred over, the power is out. Another thing is backup generator must meet electric codes and be disconnected from the grid during an outage to prevent dangerous backfeeding of electricity onto SCE's power lines. So backfeeding onto power lines can endanger the lives of electrical workers who may be working on the lines at the time. So we encourage you to always consult a licensed electrician to determine the right equipment and safe setup. Okay. Last thing I'm going to note on this, I know we're running short on time, is talk a little bit about right sizing for these generators. So this may be obvious, but it's worth mentioning that size and the associated cost of a generator is directly related to the size of the electrical loads that it serves. So the size and cost can be reduced by first implementing energy efficiency measures to reduce the cost, the load, and second, and more importantly, separating the critical loads that need to be backed up during an outage. So these are things to consider for backup generators. All right, and I think this is my last slide. And again, notifications, Dan talked about it, Crisanta talked about it, I'm going to talk about it. So earlier in the presentation, Dan mentioned the importance of signing up for notifications. My peer Terry covered the notification timelines during PSPS, and I'm going to stress that you need to sign up for notifications for PSPS. So to ensure our community stay informed during PSPS, SCE provides notifications. We do it by either email, text, or voice calls. It's all based on the customer's preference. So if you're not able to reach a customer, I just mentioned this earlier. So if we're not able to reach a customer who's enrolled in medical baseline or critical care, we will dispatch a field service representative to do a physical door knock and to notify them of PSPS conditions. I also want to talk about address alerts that are available on SCE.com outage map. So these are for non-account holders, so they can stay informed. So this is very helpful for like parents who have children that go to a different school that's on a different circuit, renters that are not SCE account holders for their residents, and then most importantly for those of us that have family or elderly parents that reside in a high fire risk area who want to be informed of a possible PSPS. So again, customers should visit the SCE Customer Preference Center to update their contact information and manage how they want to receive these notifications. And then lastly, you'll see here on the slide, there's the SCE outage map. We have provided a consolidated outage map that incorporates PSPS outages on SCE.com and outage map. So you can see regular maintenance outage that Terry talked about or unplanned outage, and then you can also see PSPS outages. We recently made some enhancements to this page, so the information is loading faster and is being more focused and accessible. View and search options are more customer friendly. This includes making it easier for customers to report an outage. The map also shows location of resources available during PSPS. So the community resource centers that I mentioned earlier, you can see those on this map: community crew vehicles, electrical vehicle charging stations, hotel assistance, and local food banks. So with that, I do want to end with please share our programs with your family and friends. And like Crisanta mentioned, your neighbors. We hear that some customers might not be aware of our program, so we ask you to please share this information. With that, I want to thank you guys for joining us tonight. And I'm going to pass it over to Shane. I think he's going to open it up for some Q&A.
Thanks, Aurora. Really appreciate it. This is the time now for Q&A. So continue to please post your questions using the Q&A feature here in the Teams meeting. Again, if you have any questions or concerns that were not addressed, you can always reach out to the Wildfire Outreach at SCE.com. Okay, at this point in time, I'm going to read off some of the questions that have been already posted in the Q&A and have some of our panelists go ahead and address those. So I'm going to start off with a question from Tom here. He says, first off, thank you for the invitation to participate in the discussion. With over 30 years of experience in cable television industry and shared attachment knowledge on Edison pole line infrastructure, I appreciate your investment in reducing the risk of wildfire. Living in a high risk area and personally observing the grid rebuild activities over the past couple of years into our canyon area, I just have one question. What mapping data do insurance companies request and Edison supply to educate the insurance carriers on where significant grid hardening has been completed, as these activities should impact loss prevention risk and policy coverage costs for related customers? So my team of analysts. Go ahead, Terry.
I'll start with this one. I'm not aware of Edison or other investor-owned utilities providing things like our hardening maps to insurance companies. I'd imagine that they use information from the CPUC and their high fire areas, but and I'm saying that because there's a significant number of wildfires that occur that are non-utility related. So just getting those maps from the utilities, only covers a portion of the wildfire risk in the state. So, but I'm not aware of information we provide, and we can certainly look into it and see if we do. But I think because the wildfires occur for a variety of reasons, from lightning strikes to human caused, I think they probably use some different metrics to calculate risk.
Thanks, Terry. Tom, if you're still on, you could always email that question to our wildfire outreach at SCE.com, and we can try to get you some more details as well. Again, we're not going to be taking anyone off mute or off camera. So if you have a question, please use the Q&A feature. If you're having an issue with that, again, reach out to the email address provided here on the screen. There was another question from Shaheen with regards to arcing. We're going to look into this, Shaheen, and try to get back to you. But one comment we did want to make with regards to this question, if you ever do see arcing on any electric utilities infrastructure, please call 911.
Shane, let me just add, buzzing noises are not unusual with our transmission system with the larger towers. So if you're hearing that around that type of equipment, that's probably normal. But if you hear it like in some of the distribution lines, oftentimes these are lines that run through people's backyards and things like that. If you're hearing a loud buzzing for there, then I would say call 911 and then call Edison. Same with the arcing question. If you see any type of flash occurring on our equipment, call 911.
Thanks, Terry. Appreciate that. There was a question in the chat from Katie. Katie's question seems to be more directed towards Riverside County. So Katie, we'll make sure we get this question directed towards them, but maybe perhaps Terry very briefly or someone on the team could just reiterate some of Edison's vegetation management practices.
I don't see the question specifically, but is it just generally regarding vegetation management?
Yeah, well, this question is about someone who lives in the city of Paris. She states that they have a lot of trees and dry brush. Why doesn't Riverside County Department of Transportation come out and cut the trees? So a little out of scope for our conversation tonight, but maybe an opportunity.
I'll just add for Edison, we do go out. Any tree that has the potential to grow into our lines is part of our tree inventory that we inspect at least once a year. In high fire areas, more than once a year. We do what we call mid-cycle inspections. And we do keep those trees in a distance away. And then, as I mentioned earlier, if a tree has the potential to fall into our lines, we assess that. We don't just remove them, because oftentimes people don't want us to remove their trees. But if we feel that there's risk to that, then we will in fact remove it. And then under some of our right of way, we will also clear some of that area. This is just pertaining to Edison right of way and Edison equipment.
Hey, Shane, just some
Oh,
follow up
Dan,
on.
thanks. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Shane. So I think if we can get the individual's contact information, we'll do two things. One, we'll reach out to Riverside County Transportation as well as the City of Paris, identify if this is within the city proper or unincorporated, and make sure we can get some loop closure back for this resident.
Okay. Sounds good, sir. Thank you. Appreciate that. We had a question from Ed earlier on in our presentation. He says, is there maps of current PSPS areas based on the hardening upgrades?
I don't think we have maps that overlay, both PSPS and grid hardening. We obviously have maps showing PSPS areas, but I don't think we have both that show. I don't think we have maps that show where we've hardened our grid.
I would just recommend, and we can drop each year we put out essentially kind of a report card on our wildfire mitigation website, and you can kind of just see from a countywide perspective where we've invested quite a bit. So we'll put the link to that question. Looks like Ray, thank you, Ray, for responding with regards to the watch duty for Casey's question. This question may be for one of our respective county partners from Debrisha. She says, is there any funding available for community emergency response teams to buy and share mobile generators, batteries with neighbors?
So Shane, on that particular question, I've actually never been posed with that question, but something that I think every question we receive here, we definitely like to explore. I think a limitation potentially on this one is going to be identifying a funding source for that. Generators also come with maintenance, there's loads and different things like that, so we want to be aware of some of that. But definitely something we will actually start to explore and look into. A lot of our focus has been referring people to the backup solution programs that Southern California Edison has, some of the other income-driven utility assistance programs for generation. But then we've also focused a lot of our efforts on care and reception sites, sheltering sites for both people and animals, as well as water systems. So water systems has been another top priority for us, but we will add this to our list here in Riverside County, and we will explore those opportunities.
And Shane, I'll just add that for San Bernardino
Yes.
County, we would recommend that if she's speaking about a community emergency response team, a CERT team, that she work with her local city. So, for example, if you are a CERT member with Upland or a CERT member with Fontana, then those cities can work with those teams to identify grant funding. So it may be an emergency management preparedness grant or an OASI grant or some kind of FEMA grant or state grants. And so the cities have more availability to identify these mitigation efforts, especially if it's in their hazard mitigation plan, that this is an issue that needs to be addressed for this vulnerable population for these reasons. Many of the cities have those vulnerability studies. They have some of the language you might need. And so it could be a regional effort by the CERT teams in that city. So that gives you a little bit more bang for your buck. And so if your grant is approved, then you're able to get that grant and use it. We've seen a couple of instances of that in San Bernardino County. We've had Big Bear, a group in Big Bear, a faith-based group that partnered with the city of Big Bear to get those grant fund dollars. So I would also recommend that she talk to her city emergency management department.
Okay. Thank you, Crisanto. Appreciate that. Terry, you may have kind of addressed this question earlier, but we had a question from Dorothy. It says, I know SCE replaced some of the lines in SB, referring possibly to San Bernardino or San Bernardino County. How do we know what type of line we have? Is there a map that shows the areas with covered or uncovered lines?
Yeah, again, I don't think we have a public map that does that. We can check, and if anybody's on the call that knows definitively, speak up. But I don't think we do.
One resource that I think we could share with Dorothy is our SCE, what we call our Dr. PEP. This will help you identify the name of the circuit you live on, and what type of line in terms of if you're looking for the size of the line from a capacity perspective. But yeah, in terms of, to Terry's point, I don't think we have a map highlighting the covered and uncovered.
And I was just going to add, standard now is covered. So it's process upgrading. It would all be covered in or outside of high fire risk area.
Okay, thanks, Ray. So standard now is covered conductor, just for those who may have had trouble hearing that. There was a question in the chat from Judy, or excuse me, in the Q&A. My husband is disabled and uses a power wheelchair and many powered durable medical equipment. We have a medical baseline, but we don't have a clear understanding on what to do if the power goes out. Can you please provide us with some guidance? I think several of us answered or provided some resources and comments to this question, but just a good opportunity, I think, to reiterate what kind of resources are available for a customer like this. Aurora, do you want to quickly re-highlight those programs?
Yes, so we mentioned earlier that we do have the 211 now. So they offer assistance during an outage, and also our community-based organizations, they're engaging with our customers during an outage and can help maybe provide that additional resource that's needed for these type of scenarios.
Thank you, Aurora. I had a question from Adam. It says, my area has had numerous shutoffs. Is there assistance with purchasing a generator? These shutoffs are very disruptive to our lives. I know I provided a link to the rebates and SCE marketplace. Anything else that we would want to highlight?
Yeah, if customers are medical baseline or self-certified with the condition, they may qualify for critical care backup battery, or income qualified customers. So they can qualify for the critical care backup battery. They need to go through our 211 services for that, and they will lend them a battery, or they can go through the marketplace for rebates on purchasing batteries.
Excellent. We had a question from Michelle. She asked, why do you have planned outages when it's over 100 degrees?
I'll take that one. We do have high heat guidelines. It's unrelated to PSPS, but and at temperatures that it's either temperature or heat index, either one. And I can share with you our guidelines generally are at 105 degrees or above, we significantly reduce our outages, and then even above those levels, we shut everything down. It's difficult because there is a lot of work to do throughout the year. Much of it is this, this covered conductor, and some of it's targeted undergrounding and other work that's helping with resilience and reducing PSPS. So we are mindful of that. We do try to shorten outages as best we can when it does get hot, but it's a balance because we really have more work than time throughout the year, and we just work as hard as we can to get this infrastructure. We're really just trying to improve the infrastructure so we can reduce these impacts to our customers.
And Shane, if I can add to that, I just want to remind everybody that Dan made a great point about cool places to go. And so your 211 has information on cool places to go when we are in a heat event. So I want to remind you that we have libraries county libraries that you can go to. We have many county regional parks that have water features throughout San Bernardino County. We have like Lake Gregory and many water featured parks for cool places to go. So there is an interactive map that you could, if you Google cool places to go, feel free, to try and identify one that's closer to yourself. And then we also recommend going to a movie theater, watching a movie, or going in the mall, walk around the mall. Identify places in your neighborhood that have the cooling features so that you could take advantage of that as well.
That's a great addition. Thank you. Kathy asked a question: when are you going to provide fire safety links and resources for high fire area residents? I think we covered that quite well. We also have here this slide. Please feel free to take a picture or a screenshot of it, highlighting all of our resources for our customers, both in high fire and non-high fire areas. Jameer asked, do any of the power grids or rebate generators require a UCC filing against the property? We'll have to look into that. Jameer, not too sure what a UCC filing is. We'll look into that for you and get back to you. See here, several more questions just came through, so give me a second here. Okay, another question we have here in the chat is from Noel, specific to a region. It says some Marietta city areas have irrigation to manage fires in arroyos, while nearby Riverside County arroyos by French Valley Airport have none. How to address this inconsistency? It's maybe a follow-up, Noel. We'll
Shane,
go ahead.
On that one, Shane, if you can give me the contact information, we'll be sure to make sure we get that over to both places and get an answer back for the resident.
Okay, thanks, Dan. We had a question from Daniel. Says, are there plans to work with local governments for new resiliency zone sites like the Cabazon Community Center?
So in Riverside County, specifically in District 5 for us in the Cabazon area, we are absolutely prioritizing. We actually have 3 sites over there right now that we are looking to transfer switches as well as generators, so we can expand our capabilities out there. Community centers also, again, like others have said, places to go, get information. It's a cool place. We'll have some resources. So we are prioritizing specifically in the Cabazon area. A lot of wind-driven public safety power shutoffs occur out there. So we are looking to expand our capabilities to have resources available to that area.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, Dan. There's another question here, Dan, if you don't mind hanging on, from Tom and Angie. It says, does Riverside County have plans to assist residents in high fire zones with the new Zone 0 requirements?
So that'll probably be a follow-up as well, Shane. If it's specifically to unincorporated areas or an incorporated city location, we'll make sure to get that to the proper fire department to get a response back.
Okay, sounds good, sir. Thank you. Terry, this one we discussed earlier, but if you have an opportunity just to maybe reiterate, had a question from Eddie saying, has the PSPS area increased this year?
Yeah, it has increased this year. Every year we go through this process where we, assess and evaluate. We look at our experiences from prior years. We look at fire behavior. And what we've been seeing is concerning trends. And so based on that, for this season, when we looked at our modeling, we do have more conservatism built in because of some of these trends that we're seeing in the environment. So all else being equal, we would see increased PSPS activity. It is ultimately dependent on the weather, as Heather explained earlier. It's hard to say, exactly where the weather's going to land. We always hope for early rains. If that happens, then it will diminish the amount of PSPS activity. If it doesn't, then we could see a difficult year with PSPS.
Thanks, Terry, for elaborating on that. We got a question from Sally. It says, does Edison need to inspect my electrical lockout system to ensure your workers are safe? Lockout system, not sure if that's referencing the panel box, perhaps. Anybody have any? We'll come back to this one, Sally. We're gonna look at this more. I had a question from Jack. It says, my Lake Arrowhead neighborhood has all SCE lines, connections, and poles replaced, aka hardened, 2 years ago. SCE is constantly trimming trees. Why does SCE turn off my power? Terry, I think this falls in line with some of our threshold discussions.
Yeah, hard to say with specificity, but some of those lines that go through Lake Arrowhead, they're particularly long. They traverse a variety of terrain, different elevations. There is a lot of vegetation there, a lot of, obviously tall trees. And so, the risk remains, as much as we're working to, improve the infrastructure and the grid hardening, and all the vegetation work that we're doing, the risk still remains during these very concerning conditions, especially when that fire potential index is high and the winds are severe. We can get down trees. We can get debris that goes into our lines. And so PSPS remains a tool. It's our tool of last resort, and only when we see these concerning conditions. But it is something that will remain even after some of this hardening work, is completed.
Thanks, Terry. Got a question from Jessica. It says, we have had several power outages, and there was one that lasted 1.5 weeks. I've looked into your rebate program, but the approved generators are banned for purchase in California. I called SCE, but no one was able to help. How can I get help through SCE staff regarding rebates that are knowledgeable with the program? Also, can you please clarify what alternatives or solutions that may be available? Aurora, would this be a question maybe you could speak to?
I'm sorry, Shane, I was over here checking something out. Can you repeat that question?
Yeah, no problem. The question is from Jessica. She says she experienced a power outage for a significant length of time. She said she went to our rebate program, and but the approved generators that are on the SCE marketplace, I'm assuming, some are banned for purchase in California. So she wants to know how she can get help through SCE staff regarding rebates that and looking for a knowledgeable individual about these programs. And then she also asked, can you also please clarify what alternatives or solutions that may be available?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm not sure if we have somebody that can help her with selecting um, a generator. I wasn't aware that the ones that are online, that some of them are not eligible for, I guess, for the rebate. I assume most of them would be if they're on our SE marketplace. So maybe that's something we can take back and we can respond to her, if that's okay.
Yeah, we'll respond to her. I know that there were some issues with CARP compliance. So I think that's where she's referencing. So
Oh, okay.
we can.
Yeah, let us look into that and we'll get back to her on that.
Okay. Looks like we have maybe time for one more question. There's a question from Victoria. It says, I live in Big Bear and wondering if the lines that affected the mini PSPS we recently received are insulated, or if there is plans to insulate. If we are going to receive more PSPS, is a generator necessary?
I'll start with the insulated wires. I know that not all the lines up in that area have insulated wires or covered conductor, and there are quite a few that are scheduled soon by the end of the year, and I believe there's more coming next year. So I don't have the specifics, but I know that there is some covered. There's more coming by the end of the year, and there's more planned thereafter.
Okay, thanks, Terry. We'll take this as our final question here. It's from Joseph. Says, what advice would you give to someone that is living in a wildfire risk area, escape plan, preparation, first aid, etc.?
I can start that, Shane. And what was the gentleman's name again?
Joseph.
So Joseph, every community will be a little bit different. So first of all, you need to kind of assess your community and see, first it starts with you. Do you have a go bag in your car? Do you have a go bag at work in case you are at work and you need to figure that out and meet the people that are leaving your home area in a wildfire severity zone? And then do you have, and I'm speaking for evacuations, do you understand who your neighbors are? Do you have a go bag for your pets? Do you have large animals? If you do have large animals, are you connected with a community who can help you evacuate those large animals quickly? If not, join one of those communities. There is a CERT team that's for large animals. And then if you also, your neighbors. So is there some vulnerable people in your neighborhood that might need help evacuating? Do you have a list of all your neighbors within, a 10-minute line where you all know to get in a group text and say, okay, I've got so-and-so, or, we're evacuating, we've got the animals. Have that community plan and talk about it and get together, as a community and have a street meeting or anything, whatever fits for your guidelines. If you live in an apartment building, or, if you live more in a mountainous area and there's only 2 or 3 homes, that looks a little bit different. And if we experience a PSPS because of some other reason, like a high heat event or a high wind event, then have that conversation with your family. Start with yourself. What do I need if I am home and I need to live my day-to-day life? What do I need to prepare if I'm going to be out of power for 5 days, 6 days, 2 days? What does that look like for me? And then what does that look like for my family? Now, what does that look like for my pets? And what does that look like for my community? So if, we get together and all of us, this is what I have in my freezer, or I have ice chests, or let's all pitch in and get ice and pack our food. Like, what does that look like? What's that conversation look like? Because the strongest communities are the ones that talk to each other and they have resiliency. So those are some of the things you want to start thinking about is for your for your situation? What is it? If I told you right now that it is 7:33 and at 7:45 we were going to have an earthquake and you were going to be out of power for 2 weeks, you and all your friends and family were going to, what do you need? What do you need in 10 minutes at 7:43? Do you have everything ready to be without power for 2 weeks? Because, for whatever reason, we'll just pick an earthquake. So think along those lines of, I would need, I can't make my coffee in the morning, so do I have a barbecue? What functions on my electricity and what do I need to mitigate to keep my life as normal as possible? So I hope that helps, Joseph.
Sure, and just those are some great points, and I think just a couple add-ons on there. I think are every community is unique and different, and so in regards to evacuations and evacuation routes, please sign up for those alerts, get those notifications, take a look at maps. If you look at Genesis Protect, a lot of times what they'll say is you're entering an evacuation area, so just make sure you follow, because your primary means to evacuate may be blocked and may not be a good route. So have an alternative route that is available for you. In regards to some of the other things as far as like first aid and stuff like that, again, community, it's important, taking care of yourself and your family and your home, but other things that you could do to help out. If you go to like in Riverside County on our website, we have a disaster healthcare volunteer program. We have a medical reserve corps. There are programs where you can sign up to be a medical volunteer, especially if you have training in a field of medicine, nurse, paramedic, EMTs, nursing assistant, different things like that. You can be a great resource to the community, especially if you're trained. Another thing that you can do, it's not necessarily specific on this one, but it depends on where you live. You could sign up and register for Pulse Points, so you can get a notification if someone is having a nearby heart attack, and there might be CPR and there's an AED nearby. So there are some existing programs out there that could help out with first aid. Just wanted to add that as well, Shane.
Thanks, Dan and Crisanta. Appreciate you both. And from the Edison perspective on the being prepared, it's having those key contacts. It's being signed up for Edison outage alerts and PSPS notifications. It's like knowing your escape routes during those evacuations and during those during our wildfire seasons. And so we appreciate all of the time that you've spent with us this evening. We hope you found this presentation enlightening. This presentation was recorded, and so we will send out the recording as well as the deck to all those who registered for tonight's Wildfire Safety Community Meeting. And again, if we didn't address your question, please reach out to our wildfire outreach at SCE.com. Well, that concludes our presentation tonight. Thank you all so much for joining us.